Welcome to the latest episode of the Hoops Boys Pod. And today we're gonna talk about the wild offseason. And we got our host with the most, Chase, and myself, Jet. We got our two guest experts, Greg and Shad. Shout out to the boys. And let's get right into it. Let's talk about Bradley Beal to the Phoenix Suns. Partner, how do we feel about the Suns and they add another scorer to their already seems like they got two of the best scorers already and they add Bradley Beal. What can they do to fill out this team? Can the three of them win a championship? How do we feel about this move?
I don't think they can do too much to fill out the roster because there's so much money committed to who's left. They couldn't get rid of Ayton as well. I know they were like hell bent on getting Chris Paul out of town. But this to me just seems like too many cooks in the kitchen right now. I get they had to do something, but they had like one good reserve left in Shamet, and they ditched him away with Chris Paul. So now it's pretty much just all star power. This roster is completely top heavy. And I just like, who's going to play point guard? Is it going to be Beal? Is it going to be Booker? I mean, I guess Booker's the default point guard at this point, but he's not really a point guard, and you take away a significant, scorer, making him having to set up Durant because obviously he's going to want his baskets. He's got to set up Beal now. I mean, Ayton, you just let him just get whatever scrap points off the backboard. But I think this is just like too much top heavy firepower on this team. I mean, I guess it's a good problem to have, but I kind of shy towards this not necessarily working out the way they wanted it to. I mean, I like the Durant one was a lot, but at least they still kind of had the semblance of a traditional lineup. This one is just a lot of scorers that all kind of need the ball in their hand to be effective. I don't really know if this is going to get them the return on investment that they think it will.
Shad, how do we feel? Do we think this is Brooklyn West now that they have three stars there and no roster to fill out the team? Do you think that they can do it different in the Suns underneath Frank Vogel?
Well, I don't think the Suns are done. I think they're eventually going to deal DeAndre Ayton. I think they're going to try to deal him for probably 2 to 3 role players. Just because they don't have any salary cap room. And then with the new CBA coming up, teams that are above, a certain amount on the salary cap, you have to trade player for player now. You can't do, one player matches 3 players' salaries and, you swap it that way. So I think they're going to do that before actually the deadline coming up before the new CBA kicks in. I think that's what the plan is. If not, then I think, they're kind of screwed until, Ayton is his contract runs out or one of the guys' contracts runs out, because they're going to be probably the highest salary cap team, I believe, in the NBA. I do like this move, however. You've got, pretty much 3 players in the prime, good players that are like kind of 2 of them are probably towards the back end of their prime, especially Durant. But now you probably got 3 of the top 15 or so players in NBA. You've got, in today's NBA, you see that you need, scoring. That's kind of what, doomed them against the Nuggets. They just couldn't outscore them. I think Beal, it gives you probably 3, people who could go off for 30 plus a game, in a series. So you could almost count on, 80 to 90 points you're coming from those 3 guys, and then as long as you get maybe 20 to 30 from everybody else, I think you might be good, going forward. I also think Beal is also sneaky. He's got some point guard skills that nobody talks about. He's just always had, somebody else who could run the point, so he just let him do it, like a John Wall or Russell Westbrook. So I think he's going to be a better point guard than most people says he is. The thing I worry about is this team's health. You do have Bradley Beal, who just he's been injured a lot lately, and Kevin Durant, who's hasn't played too many games ever since he's turned like about 30 years old, and Golden State. So I'm for it. They need to go for it. They really don't really have any like draft picks or anything like that. They really weren't going to get any. They can't get anybody in like free agency. So it's just like kind of they would be like a good team that wasn't a contending team unless they made a move. And I think this move puts them, probably right there with Denver, in my opinion.
Nice. Greg, how do you feel about the Suns and the moves that they made so far?
Tough one. Okay, let me preface it by saying I understand the immediate, bringing in Beal, his scoring acumen, 3 big guns. I get it. Long term, I don't love them. I'll echo more what Chase said. I don't love this long term. Even this year's playoffs, after they had traded, they made the trade for Durant. They couldn't get stops anymore once they dealt Johnson, Mikal Bridges to the Nets. I don't really see how this makes them much different. And there's I'm not saying it cannot work, but Beal and Booker, I don't want to say they're the same player, but that they kind of had some of the same skill sets. I don't really know. Sure, it's great to have another guy who can obviously, hit the outside shot, who can give you buckets, but I don't really see the long-term fit of this over the long term. The salary inflexibility. So I get the rationale. Let me put it that way. I get the rationale that, you got probably a year or two of Durant left, that is. But, pointing to recent history, a lot of these teams trying to go that super team route, it really does. It's not looking to be too successful. Not saying they shouldn't have taken the shot, but to me, it's like, and the other thing too is Beal, someone just alluded to that. I'm not saying this is old, but he's actually turning 30 this summer as well. So, he's not the youngest guy in the league himself. This one reeks of I just feel they could have found a better allocation of resources, really, because especially with that max contract for Beal, this is who they are now. And they're not going to have much flexibility. So I get why they did it. I don't love the move personally.
I do have a question. Now that Frank Vogel is their head coach, and he has had some success everywhere that he's been with big men and elevating them, whether that be Roy Hibbert or Nikola Vucevic when he had him in Orlando, and just recently Anthony Davis. Do you think there's a possibility that they could keep Ayton, and under the tutelage of Frank Vogel, maybe he could turn into the player that we think he could be, or kind of the player that we think he could be?
I mean, for me, do they want him to do that? Because there's already not going to be enough to me, there's already not going to be enough basketball to go around as it is. If he stays there, I kind of want Ayton to just clean up the scraps. I know that probably is not what he wants. That's not what you're paying him to do, because he's got a big contract. But there's going to be an odd man out with who's going to get touches, and Ayton's, to me, is the first choice. And it works out that he's a big man. It's not like he's a 2 or a 3, and he's sitting there waiting for the ball at the top of the 3-point line, just sitting around twiddling his thumbs until he gets a shot. He can be in the post, he can be effective and still get the ball without necessarily being set up all the time.
Right.
Without his numbers kind of being affected all too much.
Shad, Greg, y'all, anything to add to that?
Kind of what Chase was saying, do you really need, him to really do much? For that salary, I think you definitely have to trade him. I think it's just the Suns were trying to get ahead of the curve with, like I said, with this new CBA. They could go get, a couple bench players from one of these teams that just want to, give away pieces. And then they could they could slip into that, Ayton role, or they could sign somebody cheap like a Dwight Howard, one of those cheap big men who haven't played, in a year or two or overseas. It's just not that type of team where, you want Ayton to kind of dominate, unless it's just strictly defensively and rebounding. But you could get like a bunch of other big men who could do that for, a third of the price. So I don't think he's a good fit for this team, even though Frank Vogel is a good, big man coach. It's just, why do you need him when you got, three, prime, offensive threats? You just need somebody to do the dirty work. And he's just too expensive to be the guy who's going to do the dirty work on this team.
As far as I'm concerned, I think, I could see the Suns going either way with this. I definitely don't disagree. I could see them looking to deal him. On the flip side, what you addressed earlier, though, could Vogel make this work? He would be the guy who could. This is my own perception of watching Ayton with the Suns. If they are going to stay the course and Ayton is on this team, I think Ayton to me is this. And I don't want to say I kind of get it, but you have to get him touches. They have to force getting him touches, especially around. The reason being is we've all seen it. Ayton at times can look somewhat disinterested, and I get that. You don't see the ball. You're constantly. He needs to be involved if they are going to go this route and keep him on the squad. So if I'm the coach here, especially earlier on, Ayton's not going to be the go-to guy in the fourth quarter with those. But get him involved. It will bring out a more complete effort out of him. So to your question, if he does stay with the team, I think Vogel would probably be a really good guy to fit him in to where he's happy. He has a role that he's effective, because he's no slouch either. He don't. No, I get it. He's not going to get 20 shots, but he doesn't even need to do that. But don't completely ignore him either, right? He's still young in his life and his career. Yeah, he doesn't want to be. I get it. He doesn't want to he's not Dennis Rodman. He's a different player than that, right? So, my opinion, Vogel could make it work if they go a route, force some plays for him early on, like get him involved, makes him a better teammate, is going to make him want to contribute on both ends.
So you're calling him a crybaby. He needs to get the ball to, actually play hard.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm trying to be objective here. He's still young, trying for, to build himself in the league. And like anyone, he does have talent. I don't think anyone aspires to be the fourth option. And yes, if that's his role, well, so be it. But, I think that approach, obviously, you didn't see the best out of him the last number of years, especially in the playoffs. So point is, if you're going to keep him, don't have him be just this miscellaneous part. Like, utilize him, keep him involved. Make him that, in my opinion, especially with a young guy and impressionable, that will make him a better overall teammate. But if he's just a forgotten afterthought, he's probably his effort. I'm not saying that should be the case, but we've kind of seen that is the case, correct? Yeah. So I get you want to move him. I get that. But if you don't, get him involved. It's good for him and the team.
I will say, if he actually wants to play like an inside out game, if Vogel wants to instill that kind of system, there's certainly enough options where it doesn't always have to be Ayton and somebody else. He could play inside out with Durant, he could play inside out with Beal, play inside out with Booker, who he's now played with for 5-6 years now. So there's certainly a lot of options where they don't always have to have the same look to a system.
No, definitely not.
Could overall be a similar system.
And defense and rim protection. I'm not saying he's defensive player of the year by any means, but they were giving up baskets in hordes last year. So, you can't just take him out and assume, the defense is going to get better. No, they need to find an ample replacement for him as well, even just on the defensive end.
No, yeah.
Scoring's not their issue, right? We know that. That's not the issue.
Yeah.
So,
if they replace him, they would need to fill like somebody like a Brook Lopez who can just stay in the middle, and you don't have to worry about looking block shots. Like they can't just put an undersized center in there.
They still have Biyombo?
Bismack.
No, he's a free agent, I think.
Oh, okay.
They could resign him. They should.
I could be wrong. I don't think Biyombo's going to get a max contract somewhere. Could be wrong.
with the pennies, with the pennies, the Phoenix.
No offense to
Suns
Bismack,
now.
just yeah. I don't think yeah.
Well, the other side of shipping Bradley Beal to Phoenix was, of course, Chris Paul getting out of town, as we alluded to. This was kind of a little bit a long time coming. I guess his time, the sun kind of set, no pun intended, on his time in the desert. And he probably, I don't know whether he spent less time in Washington or Russell Westbrook spent less time in Utah at the trade deadline, because in no time at all, he was flipped right back around. I don't know whether he just kind of had his pick, whether the deal just kind of worked out to send him to Golden State, or he had his pick of the litter, told front office, send me to the Warriors so I can go chase a ring. And they found a way to make the deal work. We'll go into the Wizards Hall for this a little bit later, or I guess the Wizards Hall for both these trades, as well as another one they did. But Chris Paul going to the Warriors, I know Shad's got a really hot take on this, so Shad,
Who said that?
you did last week.
Your body language, shaking your head, didn't give anything away about that either.
James the Jet, in a positive light, what do we think about this trade? Is he just chasing a ring, and will he be successful?
A part of me feels like he won't be there when the season starts. Well, all of me
Being
feels that
flipped
way.
again?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because, I mean, Shad said something interesting earlier about the CBA changing, like you have to match, it has to be player for player, and the money has to match as well, right? So Chris Paul makes about $30 million this year, so they can move him for somebody like around that type of money. So I feel like he's not going to be, and he won't suit up in Golden State. My personal opinion.
Yeah. Hot take.
Yeah.
Greg, you've been keeping the Warriors the Warriors boat afloat in recent episodes and last couple of years, when the rest of us want to bury them a bit early. How does this lineup work? Do they have to get rid of someone, whether like Jet said, flipping CP3 again, getting rid of Clay? Do they have to make another deal to make this work, or can the lineup actually work as it is right now?
My take, I know I have a different take than you guys on this. So I'm trying to, you addressed it saying, is Chris Paul chasing a title? Chris Paul didn't have a choice. He got traded, right? So that, like, this isn't Chris Paul forcing, like, I don't think he went to Phoenix and said, get me out of here. No. Like, they decided they wanted to move him. So, I'm not looking at Chris Paul as this, mercurial superstar that says, get me out of here, I got to get a ring. So let me start off with that. I don't think that's the case. He gets dealt to Washington. It was clear as day Washington didn't have him in the long-term plans. They're rebuilding, which I think they rightfully are. So, the move to Golden State for me is that, like, could he possibly even come off the bench? Sure. And you know what? For my 2 cents worth, with, he has a 1-year contract. So whether this is a disaster, if you want to call it that, for a year, if he's your extra piece for a year and he's either, your second point guard off the bench, rotational guy. I mean, I don't really see, as far as that, like, I don't see the long-term danger in it, put it that way. And I know the debate is over Jordan Poole. Listen, it's very clear that Golden State made the decision that he's not the guy they want to build around. Now, we know what happened with Draymond last year. We don't know behind the scenes, even though Draymond, admitted he shouldn't have done that. My only point is this: if they made the decision that Poole is not the guy, however we feel or not, I don't see this as a horrible move, and it doesn't have to be franchise altering either. Again, it's 1 year. A guy who is going to play, like you said, what is his main motivation in this year in his career? It's to win a ring, right? So I don't see him getting to Golden State if he's not playing 40 minutes, even if he's off the bench. I personally think, he will buy in if he's playing on a team like Golden State or wherever is a contender. So for me, I don't think Golden State is done. I'm somewhat James. Do I think it's a lock he's on the roster? No, but I get the feeling he will be. And again, for my money's work, I think for a 1 year, they're not looking to extend him, nothing like that. Sure, I don't hate the move. Again, if they decided Poole's not the guy, which they have, better to make the move now.
So I agree with that. I agree with that part of it as far as getting rid of Pools too early rather than too late. But I mean, if Chris Paul is willing to come off the bench this year, then he absolutely is ring chasing because, like, yeah, he's old, but he's not that old,
But he's also just quickly, he's good enough to not retire as well, right? He's not done. He's not the same player, but Chris Paul still has good minutes in him, right?
That's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
I don't see his ego to the point where it's diminished enough where he's just willing to play second fiddle on a team like that. He wants to have a significant role. He doesn't want to just be 2006 Gary Payton.
No, but I don't think anyone on earth will go to the Warriors with Steph Curry. There's also a hierarchy here. You're not going to the Warriors. I can't imagine Chris Paul's behind the scenes saying, "Oh, it's going to be my team instead of Steph's." No, there's no one's.
No, I wouldn't expect him to do that, but get Clay out of town, move Steph off the ball so he doesn't have to run the offense, and let Chris Paul do what he does best. And because Steph, to me, he's played point guard his career out of necessity. But he's not a point guard. He's a scorer. He's an elite scorer.
Draymond runs that offense.
That's true.
One other quick thing, just we're talking about it too. And again, I know Chris Paul is not obviously not the face of health, but you know what? Even that, I could make the case that you look at it from Golden State perspective. They know like whether it's Clay, Steph, both of them together, those guys aren't getting younger either. So, if Chris Paul can come in and give them, 20 minutes or 24, whatever, I'm sure that's in their minds as well, right? Yeah, and I understand Chris Paul's not the guy that's going to give him 48. I get that. But if he is in a complimentary role, I don't see for 1 year, I don't see how that's a detriment personally.
It can't do any worse than what Jordan Poole did last season, right?
Yeah, listen, Poole's had his moments, but he was not. He definitely was not. Did not have a good playoff. That's for certain. Yeah.
Well, playoff P. a different P. Shad, I know you've got some harsh opinions for the former apple of your Clipper eye, Chris Paul.
Well, I think he's a dumbass. I know he had something to do with saying he wanted to go to the Warriors. Like, why, out of all the teams, would you want to go to this team? Like, why not take a buyout and go to a better team? You're gonna go to an aging team that, clearly, if you watch last playoffs, like they're on the decline big time, and they're in a sinking ship, and they have kind of no plan. Their buoy was, biggest thing was Jordan Poole. I don't like Golden State's strategy of trying to win, but still let's draft all these like young, undeveloped, unpolished players. I think they need to pick a side. But they're just headed for disaster. As far as Chris Paul, I did just lose respect for him, unless he leaves there somehow. He gets traded again or takes a buyout or whatever. Like, that was, Steph was like your biggest rival. The Warriors, when the Clippers were big rivals, when the Warriors were kind of coming up, God, was like probably like 10 years ago now, I guess. But it doesn't make sense because Chris Paul, he can't really be the leader of that team. He's probably going to have to come off the bench. His minutes are going to be very reduced. And it's not like we're going to an ascending team or a team that's just missing that one kind of piece. Like, if you went to the Celtics or, the Sixers or somebody that just needs like a leader and missing that one piece, I'd have been okay. But you're going to a team that's, coming off a dynasty, has their established players, and you've been rivals with, like, I mean, he was probably one of my top 5 players of all time. This is just like when people lost respect for LeBron during the decision. To me, that's just how I feel personally. So I hope like somehow he leaves that team, gets traded again, he takes a buyout. But to me, Chris Paul, I'm done with you. You're dead.
Wow. Well, at least he didn't have a primetime special on ESPN to announce it.
He played 3 months with Kevin Durant, and
But
he
Shad, I
rubbed
gotta
off
ask you
on
a
him.
question for real though, and I mean this. I understand it in your personal feelings. I get it, but I don't know this, but I'm feeling if he had his druthers, he probably didn't want to get traded from Phoenix, right? I mean, so there's not, I think if you're a front office, like how many teams really would have taken Chris Paul at this point? I asked that seriously. I mean, $30 million. The guy hasn't stayed healthy in years. I'm just saying, trying to devil's advocate here. How many places would he really be wanted at that contract? I don't know that. That's the only thing I cater it with. Like, I don't think the market for him is anywhere near what it once would have been.
You don't think he could have took a buyout? Like nobody offered him a buyout?
I don't know. I mean, yes, I guess so. But even with that, yeah, sure, I get it. But I often think as well, though, sure, that could have happened. But I don't know if many teams would be, yeah, of course, if you get him for nothing, I understand that, sure. But would he really fit in a lot of, it'd be hard to trust your playoff hopes on because of his health. That's all. I'm just guessing he would have stayed with the Suns. They obviously had other plans in mind, which obviously played out.
I mean, only thing I'm happy about is the Warriors' future is just looking bleak as hell. You gave away, probably your star player of the future, for maybe 1 year of Chris Paul, and you're still trying to hold on to that, dynasty core. Now you have nobody after, kind of Steph gets out of his prime. Draymond and Clay are already out. Like, who do you have? Kuminga hasn't done anything. Wiggins, he's not that guy. He's he's good, but he's kind of not a alpha. He's probably like a second or third option at best. And you're drafting all these 5-star players that are in high school, but they're not panning out. You're just kind of drafting them on potential, and you haven't developed any of them. So I feel in about 2 years, the Warriors are going to be like one of the worst teams in the league, and I hope they don't, rig the draft for them so they get some star player coming up for something. Because
no, that only happens for the Spurs.
Well, the one thing too, Shad, and I definitely don't disagree with you, but at least under the old GM, they made it pretty clear, like they're going to play out Steph's window, and I get that, so I think they probably do understand in 2-3 years it is, they probably want to avoid the disaster of going 12-70 type of deal, but I mean I think they've made it clear, like this is their franchise. They're gonna play out that window. And they have 4 titles, right? Who am I to say? I understand the sentiment. Put it that way. The loyalty, the fan base. I get that. But just the Paul thing again. It doesn't hurt them long term. The pool, however pool plays, will be the determining factor. Did they make the right decision or not? But we don't know, I guess.
Bob Myers was a smart man to get out of there. He saw it from a mile away. He's like, time to leave. Let me
Bob Myers.
He's a smart man. I would have left too. Okay. Like, I see where this is heading to the iceberg in the Titanic. Like, we had a nice voyage. I'm out before like anybody could say anything bad about me. Put the blame on Mike Dunleavy.
Partner, let's move on before we start cracking skulls together.
Well, I think we should talk about the other end of this trade, where Washington pulled off their magic trick and got Jordan Poole a bunch of picks. They got a bunch of pick swaps, a bunch of second-round picks upcoming, all spanning from 2026 all the way to like 2028. They got Tyus Jones. Gallo and Shamit. Tyus is like a really good point guard. He has the highest assist to turnover ratio in the league. So you pair him with Jordan Poole, I think that's pretty solid to start off with. So gang, how do we feel about the Wizards and their current haul? Greg, let's start with you.
I think Washington, from their perspective, I love what they did. And this is just my school of thought. I cannot deal with, from experience as a fan of a team, as we well know, I can't deal with teams who try to play for the 8th seed for 15 years. You wind up staying there. I think that Washington squad, back it up the whole. They had 3 really good players. They had Beal, they had Kuzma, they had Porzingis. I think what they did to lose Beal's because the point is, by the time Washington is ready to contend again, Beal will be past his prime. Porzingis will be hurt again. Kuzma will have. I think they took the right organizational approach. They actually moved these big contracts. They moved Beal had the only no trade maxed out in the entire league. They got rid of that contract, which I think was paramount to their future. So I just think on a whole, they didn't hem and haw, just like Shad's, he's railing against, and I get it, like Golden State trying to kind of play both sides. Washington made the decision. We need to rebuild where this team is not going nowhere. And I like, to your point, I do like Tyus Jones. I think he's a nice player. He's perfect for it's good for his career. It's a good fit. He's a young kid, going to get more time. Poole can be the main scoring option for the time being with Washington. So I think it's good fit for the player, and organizationally they did the right thing. They said it's time to reboot. Let's play for the future. So I like that they went all in and blew it up. I'm a big fan of what they did.
And they've been doing this for like a couple of years now, especially with getting from underneath John Wall's contract, and now it's like finally let's start over. You know?
And I just think it's the right move. Yes, could they have added a piece and played for the 7th or 8th seed? Sure, that's not a long-term viable. It's not. So I think it's very wise, the decision they took. Yeah, they didn't fool themselves in thinking they're close to a contender. They were.
Shad, how do we feel about the new look Wizards? And is Jordan Poole going to average 30 next season?
Yeah.
I mean, the Wizards. I mean, I think everybody just suspects them. What Greg was kind of alluding to. They're going to be, a team that's going to be in the draft lottery probably for the next few years. They pretty much, decided they're going to do a complete rebuild. There's no sense of being, a play-in team or, a team that, makes the playoffs and then basically is easy first-round exit. So it's a good thing that they finally got rid of Bradley Beal after all that speculation, which seems to be the past couple of years. John Wall, left a season or so ago. They got rid of Porzingis, who's a good player, but he's kind of more of a complimentary player. So I think he'll fit right in with the Celtics. And now Kyle Kuzma, he seems like he could be a good young player. I'm not sure if he's necessarily, a great player, but he's definitely a solid starter, you could have and kind of rely on going forward. Jordan Poole, I think it's going to be like a James Harden type of trade where, the Warriors regret this and he's going to be, an all-star player. I'm not saying he's going to be like James Harden, MVP, top 5 player in the league for close to 10 years, but I think he's going to make, a few all-star games and average 25 points, and he's going to be looking like a nice young, kind of star in the making. If 5 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised if he made two or three all-star teams, and he's one of the top players in the Eastern Conference, top guards. So I think he's going to get the green light. He's going to be able to jack him up, shoot 25, 30 times a game. And I could see him, winning like most improved player and kind of all these other accolades, just because he's going to be a good player in a bad team, and there's nobody else who's even close to him on that team. So I think they're going to be an exciting team, but I don't expect them to win any more than 30 games or so for the next couple of years.
And just to note, Kyle Kuzma declined his player option, so he's a free agent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That just happened. That just happened yesterday. So, partner, anything to add about the Wizards and the new haul?
I'll definitely double down on Chad's point about him being a contender for most improved player. I mean, talented offensive players on bad teams, they typically tend to pour in 25, 27, 30 points a game, which is obviously a big step up from his production in Golden State. I like the haul they got, especially now if Kuzma's gone too. That's even more money. That's even more money freed up. But I'd be surprised. I guess I can't put it completely out of the realm of possibility, but I would be surprised if Tyus Jones and Poole play together. But even if they don't, I think Tyus Poole is a great backup for Jordan Poole, or Tyus Jones is a great backup for Jordan Poole. Gallo, if he stays healthy, obviously he's on the backside of his career, but there are worse problems to have than a 7-footer who can shoot threes. And Shamet is a good, third tier role player, 3-and-D guy. So as far as flipping the page from someone like Bradley Beal, there's not too many, and we'll get into the draft picks later because they had a little bit of an active draft night, but they did they pulled some strings there. And I think as far as fresh page and rebuild, that you can't really give them, whether it remains to be seen, of course, whether the Wizards actually put some success together, but you at least can't start off with too much better of a fresh slate to me. The other side of this, as we just keep on these transitions going, the Celtics also did a big facelift on their franchise, and we went over it numerous times in the playoffs. We dragged them through the mud and the stones because they really needed some kind of shakeup. They really needed some kind of shakeup on this roster because it was clear that all the star power, the personalities weren't necessarily working, and they weren't being mature enough to elevate this team past title contention and into actual title winning. So they dumped one of Jet and my favorite players, Marcus Smart. It was very much heart and soul of this team, I guess, but certainly not your prototypical starting NBA point guard. And then they bring in Porzingis, who is a big body who can, if he's healthy, can do a lot of things. So, Shad, what do you think about these new look Celtics? Is this enough to kind of shake up status quo and make them realize that, okay, guys, what you were doing wasn't working. Now we need to put a little bit of reality check to you?
I mean, I don't think it's enough that shakes up the organization, but I do think it's a good piece. I still think, like they said, they need a point guard, just to kind of put everybody in place, especially late in games. But Porzingis, he seems like he's going to be a nice addition. He could play, both the 4 and the 5. So that gives the Celtics, pretty much 3 great bigs that they could put in at any time. But I still think it comes down, they're going to have to, I would wait like half the season and see how it works, and then somehow make a move, whether that you got to trade, Brown or Tatum, or, somehow trade some draft picks to get a leader at point guard. But, I think it puts them a little in better position to, where they were this past year. I think they can make it to the NBA Finals. I don't think they're the contending team now with this move, but it's a good start, and it's good to just, I think, we'll play it out. I don't think they need to go crazy at all trying to make any more moves for the moment. Like I said, I wait till sometime in the season, see how it goes. But this is a nice addition. Porzingis, I think he made an all-star team, at least one. So you're getting somebody who could very easily average 20 and 10 for you guys, and plays, pretty good defense when he wants to, and, very athletic. And I think that's what the Celtics need, because you do have an aging Horford. He's still good in his spots, but maybe this gives him less minutes. Maybe he comes off the bench now. And then Robert Williams, he's had, durability issues. So Porzingis kind of fits in that role of the team right now. I'm not sure if they're going to, keep Malcolm Brogdon with, kind of maybe his feelings are hurt. So maybe that's the one guy that you deal, this offseason, because he was pretty much already traded till a trade fell through. But I like this move for the Celtics, and I do think it puts them, I would say, second behind Milwaukee in the East. A toss-up. It's closer now, but I think it's a toss-up. I do think they're better than Miami, unless they get Dame.
Yeah. And that was actually, be patient, we'll get to that.
Okay, sorry.
And that was the Brogdon trade was something that I actually liked going through it. So it's a kind of a shame that didn't work out. And now he probably does have his nose busted out of joint a little bit. Greg, this is your backyard. What is this? Is this enough for the new look Celtics, or they have to do maybe one more piece?
I think this is a slam dunk personally. I think it's a brilliant move. You look at the end of last year. It's obvious that we all knew the Celtics had talent. That wasn't the issue. Fit, chemistry, and it seemed to digress this year. There's no doubt about it. They definitely, and we saw it. I mean, if Tatum or Brown, just take Game 7 where the season ended. Tatum goes down. The whole onus was on Brown. Quite frankly, their best player in that game who actually carried them and got them back into the game at some point was Derek White. Derek White actually took a big step forward. The reason I say it is addressing, listen, I know Marcus Smart is a good player. They needed to jumble this up. Porzingis, the talk of Bradley Beal, Porzingis averaged 23.2 just like Beal did. And I'm admitting, someone who, when he was young with the Knicks, he was immature. He was immature on the court. He was immature off. I even like the fact that he admitted prior to the moves, saying that, he has learned. He was a bit of an ass early in his career. He, demanding this. I think he's at the right time in his career, maturity-wise, on the court, off. He offers them. I mean, he's deadly from three. I mean, so if he just offers them so much that they don't have, his numbers in the paint when he plays in the post. The guy scores at a very high level in the post. He shoots almost 40% from three. He gives them a rim protector. I think it's like a brilliant move for what Boston did. I honestly do. I think he makes them, my own opinion, with him, he makes them the clear-cut favorite in the East. I love the move. I really do. And I'm a Knicks fan. I kind of was like, when they made this move, I said, oh, geez, like this one feels legit to me. I think he really gives them an element they don't have. And I'd be surprised if they don't represent the East in the finals again after this.
Wow. So you like, who's going to be the heart and soul of that team, though? I feel like Marcus Smart was like one of those guys who did more than the box score.
Listen, Marcus Smart, he's a good player, but he's not the star, right? He's not. And honestly, as weird as this sounds, because offensively, you look at their numbers overall, and you're like, well, they have so many guys. When one of their main guns, though, could not score, you saw the issues they would have. And I just think Porzingis now gives them that. Marcus Smart, he made himself better. He's still low 30s 3-point shooter. We know that. I think, as I said, I'm a Derek White fan. I'm not saying he's the star point guard, but he legit took, like, he was at times, if you watch him enough, I know he's not their most talented player. He literally was their best player at times on the court. Just adding Porzingis just changes the whole dynamic, how you guard them. You saw that too when Miami went zone against Boston. Boston struggled. There was no doubt about it. Good luck with that against Boston. You could put Porzingis in the middle. You can put him in the middle almost. I know he's not Jokic, but you get the point. He can distribute from there. He can spot up and hit three. I really think it's a great move for them. I do. I'm all over this move. I'm kind of pissed about it, actually. But yeah. But I just pure basket. I really think, like, I think this was a brilliant move. I do.
James the Jet, you're in the camp that thinks Chris Paul is not going to hang around San Francisco too long. Is this Boston point guard situation with Brogdon enough to satisfy them for the season, or is this potentially a landing spot for someone like Chris Paul or any other point guard that might be out there?
That is a good question. Could be, because I think before the Celtics made the KP move, they were talking about going after CP themselves once they saw that he was on the market. But I think they made the right decision. And the beauty of it all, they still have Brogdon to deal if they want. If CP is that point guard, they could go grab him. But I don't know why, I don't think Brogdon is what Golden State needs, but who knows, Nobody saw the CP trade coming, and if he stays there, who knows? I mean, that would be nice for the season. But as far as KP, I think that, like what Greg said, that was a slam dunk. He gives them exactly what they need: spacing, size, and what they lose in Marcus Smart on the defensive end on the perimeter, he can provide some of that in the paint, lock down their paint. So I think it was a pretty good move for them. He's a legit scorer, legit threat from three. So big shout out to the Celtics for making this move. And not only they got picks out of this too. So
yeah, it's a good point, James. They did.
Yeah,
they got picks out of this, first round picks.
Yeah, so talk about cream on the top, like so.
2 first rounders from Memphis, correct?
Yeah, so
like even if Memphis is good, they're still first rounders.
Yeah,
I mean, that's almost an A just for the simple fact that you turn Marcus Smart into 2 first round picks.
And Kristaps Porzingis, which is insane. But like Shad alluded to, we all have a feeling, it's been rumored that they might end up in Miami. Me personally, it's a trade that I would like to see, but I would like to hear from you guys. Like, is there any trades out there that maybe haven't been talked about, or something that you heard that you would like to see happen? Shad, not to put you on the spot, but is there anybody out there that you would like to see moved, or you see them landing in a situation that would be more advantageous for them?
That I'd like to see moved. I mean, I like to see Kawhi Leonard moved, but that ain't gonna happen.
I mean, we'd like to see Julius Randle move too, but
I would make that trade straight up right now.
Julius Randle for Kawhi?
Yeah, I would.
You do know there have been rumors about Paul George going to the Knicks, and apparently, like there really have been some talks, at least.
I saw that too for RJ and quickly.
I don't like that.
I don't like that either.
Come on.
I would like George for Randall.
So I would want a little bit more then.
Oh, I would too if I'm you, but I'm not. I'm a Knicks
fan. No, but the player, I mean, I would want to see traded, as you already alluded to, is probably Dame. He's been very loyal to Portland. They drafted somebody who's going to play his position. So it's basically either it's going to stifle, kind of the growth of somebody that, looks like he could be a future superstar by taking away his shots, for the next couple of years, or you just kind of get, say your things, have a press conference, everybody cries and he moves on to another team. I'd like everybody's been saying, I think he'd be a great fit for Miami. They could get, pretty good, return, from Miami, I think, with all the kind of role players and, undrafted free agents that they've gotten over the years, and get a nice, 3-4 players in exchange for, Damian Lillard. So if I had to pick one, I think it works best for both sides if Dame was traded to Miami and Miami gets stronger. They get the number one option on offense, and they have a, tough defensive team behind them. And Portland, gets young, and they get, 3 or 4 players who could probably fit into, their future plans, and maybe even shock a couple teams. And, maybe in a year or two, they're the new Sacramento Kings.
Greg, is there any one person that you would like to see moved, or?
I'll stick on that, as I said, because the Paul George being a Knicks fan, I mean, that would be a really interesting move if that came to fruition somehow. Definitely with high risk. But back to the Dame thing. The one thing I'd question is if from Miami, like Miami is not okay. Miami gets by more on guile, on toughness, on of course Dame. I mean, it'd be foolish to say he comes there, he adds. But what is the package that goes west? So like if you then take Bam out of the mix, well, I mean Miami's calling card is his defense, right? So what happens there on that side? Like, of course, any team with Dame on it is going to be better. But I don't necessarily think in Miami's case, like, what are they going to have to give up to get him is really the issue. And I'll just back up because I remember this was talked about a year ago. Like, I don't know the numbers and I have to look further, but like someone like the Sixers to me would actually make a little more sense that if Dame went there. If you somehow pull some sign and trade or something with Harden, for my money's worth, if you could get Dame with Embiid, like that to me would put them right in the mix. I'm not the biggest James Harden guy, but I really think like that, like he would put them in that kind of immediate championship contender window. And I know they were close last year, but I still don't think they were. Like I know they went long with Boston. I didn't see them. Dame over there, that makes some sense to me. So I mean the Dame thing for me, to get back to the original question, that is definitely the interesting part, because even if he stays in Portland, how does that work? So where Dame goes would definitely be my most interesting subplot going forward. And I don't think anyone knows at this point, right? Yeah. I don't even know if Portland knows. So
right.
Yeah, but because it will be. I guess I would put it this way. You hate to say it that way, but it would probably stifle or slow down Scoot's progression as a player if Dame's still there. I mean, it just will, right? Yeah. Dame's going to be the star. He should be. So if you're Portland now, it's like, well, you don't think you're going to have a title window with Dame. Now's the time.
And you kind of want to move him before training camp and all that good stuff.
Or before injury. He's not 25 either anymore. It's just the reality of the situation. It's a sad reality, but yeah. I mean, unless they have some other ace up their sleeve that we're not thinking about that's going to augment the team now. Yeah. I mean, I think if not, it's time.
Now like y'all, alluded to, Miami doesn't really have much to trade for him. Pretty sure they're going to trade everybody not named Bam and Jimmy Butler. That leaves Tyler Hero out and Victor Oladipo and Kyle Lowry. I mean, I think those are like the only players they have on contract. And then I didn't even think of the Sixers, but they have a lot to offer. Well, more than what Miami would. So it's going to be interesting to see what. Like
just quickly, Jen, I'm just thinking to myself, and not that you want to give up Maxey, but that kind of makes sense to me. I know Maxey would play. He'd probably conflict with Scoot a bit too, but there's I feel like there's a bit of a fit there.
Yeah.
Tobias Harris.
Tobias, yeah.
All the money.
I mean, Tobias is a decent player. Yeah, I mean, but
decent player making too much money.
Do we? Here's what I'd ask you guys.
Oh, is it John Collins?
Yeah.
Who do like just poll amongst us? Do we think Dame is moved before the season? It's tough for me. I don't know.
Yes,
I say yes.
I think a lot less. I think a lot less he gets moved in the last week than I did 2 weeks ago.
I just my own 2 cents. No knowledge of anything of this. I'm getting the feeling he's there to start the season and he's dealt during the year.
When does that new CBA start?
It starts July 1st, but I mean, I don't think Portland is in that tier. It's like certain tiers, like
okay.
How much you're over the salary cap, then you can only trade player for player because that's like how they
got it. Okay.
And the penalties too. It's like tiered now how the penalties are going to be. And if you're like Golden State and you stay over that highest, you're literally like, you're paying basically double your salary. Maybe not that much, but close. Yeah.
Unbelievable. So I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I guess if I had to pick a player, I mean, Dame is definitely one, but the player that always comes to mind is uh, Miles Turner, because I feel like every year he's in trade rumors. Like they're going to trade him here, they're going to trade him there. I just wish the Pacers would make up their mind and either, commit to him or move him. They got a bright young star in Tyrese Halliburton. I think that's like, they're gonna focus on him. But I mean, Miles is not a slouch. He could score the ball, space the floor, he blocks shots. I just don't see why he's always mentioned in trade rumors. So if you're ready to move him, just move him.
That could actually be an interesting one, tying back to an earlier point. If let's say Indiana and Phoenix did a straight up swap for Turner and Ayton, that could probably be a decent move for both players, because Turner doesn't need the ball in his hands. He can just be there, collect rebounds and put backs and transition dunks and that sort of thing. And Ayton would get the ball more and be more involved in Indiana and have a 1-2 game with Halliburton.
And Miles could space too. He could step out and hit the three. That's something that Ayton can't do. Well, not consistently. That would be nice too, because he can space and also plays defense at a high rate. So that's exactly what Phoenix needs. How about you, partner? Would any player on your mind?
I was running through some in my head while we were talking. One I actually kind of settle on is Anthony Davis, because I don't know if they can get rid of that contract or anybody would even take it, but the Lakers are going to be in not a great position. And I kind of wouldn't mind seeing the Lakers in a decade-long purgatory. But besides
I'd
that,
rather hell.
Yeah. But if they don't figure out something soon, LeBron, I don't think LeBron is going to want to be a part of that team that that will have to be so bad to draft his son. And we know he wants to play with his son, so he's probably going to leave and leave them high and dry. And they're gonna they probably will need to get something for AD sooner rather than later. And so that would be one that I could kind of like pie in the sky if the franchise is willing to really do what was probably right for them. Deal him now, get some kind of decent package for him, and set yourself up for a time after LeBron, because LeBron is going to leave that team in complete shambles when he wants to just play his last year or two with his son.
Right.
As far as Dame is concerned, the whispers in the last week since the draft, I mean, Scoot's saying all the right things. He wants to play with Dame. The GM saying all the right things. He doesn't have any intention of trading him. They had a good talk. He wants to see Dame and Scoot play together. So the waters are kind of cooling. And to our conversation just now, what destination makes sense? I mean, he goes to Miami. Miami's going to have to give up Bam probably. Does that just leave Miami as a slightly better Portland East? Does he go to Boston? They probably have to give up one of the big two. So, I mean, how does that work? Philly would be great, but does Philly want to give up Tyrone Maxey? So there's just like so many buts with potential destinations. I kind of think something that looked like a 70-30 chance for Dame to get somewhere else is probably coming back to 50-50 or 40-60, and more as time goes along, more chance than not that he's just going to stay there.
James, one last thing I forgot when we talked off air. That's why you asked one guy, Karl Anthony Towns, to me. He now has to be in the conversation of a big guy who may actually move. You hear rumblings out of Minnesota that how true they are, we don't know, that Edwards doesn't necessarily love playing with him. And, and if you saw kind of the way they played this year, you'd almost understand it. And if I'm the front office, Towns, his reluctance to do anything but want to stay outside, shoot the three, and play like he's a guard. That's got to be frustrating. I mean, I've used this a million times because I can't believe I witnessed it in my life. The play-in game against the Lakers, they literally did not get a single free throw until the last second of the game when they got fouled in a three. That's inexcusable when you have a guy like Karl Anthony Towns. It's ridiculous if you think of it that matter.
Which
So
that
for
should
me,
have happened anyway, because that was
it's ludicrous. I mean, they call everything in the NBA to begin with. But seriously, like that, if I'm Minnesota, Edwards is clearly the guy, and I don't necessarily think Karl Anthony will be good as like accepting the number 2 role. You know, he's made comments, "Oh, I'm going to change the league forever." Yeah, you're going to be the only 7'2" guy that didn't draw a single foul in a game. That's what you're going to do, buddy. Anyway, as I digress, I do really think that they're going to be at a tipping point where I get the feeling that is someone who obviously does have value as well. We know how talented he is, but he's someone to watch for me.
That's a good point to make, because they, especially since they gave Nas Reed some money, you know what I mean? So it could be a line in the sand for Karl, you know. Like we got our 2 bigs. We can't move Rudy Gobert because nobody
can't
wants
move.
him.
That's a great point. They can't move him. So
can't move him. So
no.
We got Ant-Man. We could move you and get some pieces and build around that,
Agreed.
you know.
A little off court, well, I guess technically all this is off court news, but really off court news. As the world turns, so does the Ja Morant saga. There has finally been a punishment levied. 25 games to start the season, and I mean, you guys know I lamented on this in the past. You know, a little squishy about, you know, what type of discipline to levy against a player when no actual crime was committed. But due to the fact that he went through the whole escape thing or whatever that was, he had a meeting with the commissioner. He said his apologies to the team, to the commish, and then he went ahead and had another incident. I think this number is fair. I can be satisfied with that. Because it's not nothing. I know it's terrible grammar, but it's not nothing, but at the same time, it's not so burdensome on the team that they have to be without their star for a really significant amount of time and try to work him back in the mix with minimal time to go before the playoffs. So I think that's fair. And honestly, I mean, the unofficial start of the NBA season is Christmas anyway. That may take him to Christmas. So, I mean, you might have a situation where that locks in Memphis playing on Christmas Day, because that could be Ja's first game of the season, maybe, you know? So, Greg, what's your take on the length of this Morant suspension? Fair, too much, too little, what have you?
I'm kind of with you on this. I think it's about, I mean, you know, what did he unofficially get, 8 games last time, or was a team imposed? It can't be nothing. I mean, I understand the Players Association saying, well, he didn't do anything. I get that as well. But, you know, the NFL just use an analogy with like Brady and like, you know, they have their own rules. So, you know, they can suspend someone for player conduct, you know, and for Ja, I mean, I almost look at it this way. I do agree with you. Memphis should be decent enough. They're not going to come out of that 5-20. They're probably not. They'll probably be slightly above 500. You know, now you're bringing Smart in. I don't think it was directly relatable to that move, but it obviously now gives them, you know, somewhat of another lead guard who has been in that role. So I don't think, and for Ja himself, I mean, what was the alternative here? Just have nothing happen, and then, you know, hopefully for him, does he? You know, it's like the kid who gets in trouble at school. If he's not punished, I don't know. Like, does he just keep going down that road type of deal, right? So I'm with you. I think it's about fair. I rumors of a whole season. I think that would have been ridiculous. I think 25 games, 20 to 25 would have been about my thoughts. So I'm personally good with it. And I don't, and same thing what you said. I don't think this buries Memphis. Quite frankly, you know, he's injury prone already. They're probably going to be better off. Less tread on the tires later in the season. So
Yeah,
I think it's about right though. I do.
Chad, what you got? Fair or not so much?
No, I think it's fair. I didn't expect him to get like a season-long suspension or get, anything above what, I think who was it, Miles Bridges got last time for domestic violence. I don't think it rises to anything that serious. But I mean, Ja, he showed, terrible judgment. Like the best thing you can do to show that you're sorry is change your behavior. And he obviously didn't take it, very seriously. Showing a toy gun or whatever you want to call it, on IG Live after he already got in trouble with about some gun incidents. I think he has to understand, yeah, he may not have broken the law, but just like pretty much every workplace in America, there is kind of a conduct policy. Yeah, maybe you can't get arrested for it, but you could still get disciplined for stuff that you do that you can't get arrested for. So I think he just has to understand that, along with like a lot of other people, that you represent yourself, your company, pretty much everywhere you go. So don't do anything stupid, especially after they kind of gave you a slap on the wrist last time. So I think he finally gets it, hopefully. Along with the suspension, he's, losing, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, just based on all the incentives and the endorsements that he's losing. So I think it's a very fair, suspension. Like Greg was saying, I don't think Memphis is going to be a last place team that he's out 25 games. They'll probably be around the 500 mark, because they kind of showed over the past few years that they've been a sustainable team without him. But Ja, he's got to learn. He's the guy who could have been the face of the league a couple of years ago. Young, small guy, kind of like Allen Iverson, but seemed more, I guess, polished, off the court. But I think that chance is kind of gone for him to kind of be like one of those star players, off the court for the league. But I think it's a fair suspension.
And that's actually, being the way it's currently playing out, a fair comparison as well. Partner, round us out. Agree or different take?
I agree. I think this was the right amount of games for a suspension. The best way for him to learn is for them to hit his pockets, and this is definitely going to do that with this 25-game suspension. But the one thing that I did realize is the Grizzlies are used to playing without him for this amount of time. In the past 2 seasons, he missed like 20 games plus each season. So it's like, it's par for the course with them. They should be able to keep this ship together. And I won't say they'd be top 5 in the West, but they shouldn't fall, too far until he comes back. Now, the only thing is it could be a chemistry issue. This is another 20 plus games that they're going to be playing without him. And they could find something without him, be going on a winning streak, and then he comes back, and then they got to acclimate him into the game plan. And in that way, it's unfortunate, but I think he should learn his lesson, hopefully, and stop playing with guns on the internet.
James, quick add. On your point with playing against him, I just checked quickly. They're 37-24 with him out of the lineup, which that's a playoff pace. I'm not saying he's better, but they're good enough to get through that.
Yeah. So I think the Grizzlies should be all right. Hell, maybe they won't, but I think it's more so when he's ready to come back, after this suspension, acclimate him into what they've been doing and trying to keep up their, if they're winning ways. Well, it'd be wrong if we didn't speak about the draft, right?
Oh yeah, that happened.
And as we all thought, Wemby went number 1 to the San Antonio Spurs. So, I would say they're the winner of this draft, with all the hype around Wemby. But I want to get into it and talk about maybe there's a player that you think that got drafted that was a more significant pick. Maybe it was a pick like, what the hell is this team doing? All of those type of things. So, partner, start with the guest first. The last couple of topics. I'm gonna start with you.
I mean, the Wizards, we spoke about a little earlier. They pulled in a ton of picks. They also got Wemby's French teammate. I heard over the broadcast that I didn't realize that connection was there, but I guess they had played together, Bilal Coulibaly, which I don't necessarily know if they needed to do that trade. Because it was just swapping down with Indiana. But I mean, that's obviously a big time prospect playing with another talent. So if he's anywhere close to what we think Wemby's going to be, that's another good piece. Like we were saying, with all the pieces they just added, that's another great one that they just add to the mix as well. I found that a lot of the buzz kind of fell off after the top 3.
Yeah, I felt that way too.
So I was kind of like trying to pick apart, and I don't know. I had to take a little bit of a gripe at ESPN, because when draft night is always, they make the pick and you see B-roll all over the place of the players playing, of the players' highlight reels. And I feel like it took like 6 picks to see like significant video of the players. Like some of these kids, we either don't know or we forgot what they look like on the court. Like, can we see some video of these players that are going to be hopefully the next NBA superstar? But anyway, I digress. I mean, there was a lot of movement, I think probably because the draft was so top heavy, but I know the league's happy, because it was like, I heard earlier today that it was the highest rated draft in the last 8 years or so. And I'm imagining a lot of that is due to Wemby, because he's a generational talent. And I think that's actually makes it look even better on the league, considering the fact that after the top 3, the kind of name recognition and notoriety fell off a little bit. So, I mean, to me, the winners are the 3 teams at the top, getting the 3 biggest talents. I think, like I said, I think Washington is a winner, getting all the picks they did. And I think it was a good draft and a lot to be seen, because sometimes you see a lot of college players kind of like fall to the wayside that you're used to seeing. But the draft actually comes around and you don't see those players drafted. So you really do kind of, that is kind of like, if there was a loser of the night, it probably would be ESPN for just not running enough video for all these kids that we don't know a lot about.
Greg, how about you? Any clear-cut winners to you, like besides the Spurs? Any losers?
Yeah, well, definitely the Spurs, and yes, 100% the Spurs. And a team that I liked, I just feel like they made 3 great picks, even though they're late. I love what Utah did, actually. Like, Utah had 3 picks in the draft. They got Taylor Hendricks, whose basically stock just keeps going up out of Central Florida. But then they came later in the draft, and I've harped against Keontae George from Baylor. But because he played very erratic, he played very immature season at Baylor. But there's no doubt when you saw him on his right day, that guy can light up the scoreboard. I mean, he's got immense offensive potential. So they got him down at 16, where he was legit prior to the year. They were talking he was a top 5 pick. And again, inconsistent season, but doesn't change his talent level, and he's still 18, 19 years old. Then they came out with Bruce Sensabaugh at 28. Who, when he had health issues over his year at Ohio State, but same thing, like if he had played a full year and Ohio State had been better, I think Sensabaugh is good enough. He could have been in the back end of the lottery type of deal. So I love teams like Utah seems to be on the right track. And I think they added 3 really, really good players that are going to help. I think all 3 of those guys are contributors. Of course, we touched on the Spurs and Wembayama. They could not have another draft pick for 5 years, and that'd probably be worth it. I'm going to hammer against one team, though. I'm going to go against Orlando. Orlando, I feel like, has 77 guards on their 15-person roster, okay? I like Anthony Black at Arkansas. Long, rangy, jump shot a question, but he, to me, he's going to be the type of guard. He's going to be good defensively. He'll make an impact either way. But then they come at number 11 and get Jett Howard, and this makes zero sense to me. Here's my point. Even if they've lacked shooting, I don't think Jett Howard was even close to the best shooting guard that's available right there. You had Grady Dick at 13 right behind him, then Jordan Hawkins at 14, which I'll go on the record right now. I think both those 2 players are going to be better than Jett Howard by a lot. So but even if, like, I just don't get it. They still have Suggs. They have Fultz. They have Anthony. Like, what are they going to do with all these guards? Do you remember when, you know what this reminds me of? Do you remember when Minnesota, and I'm forgetting the star, they had the two point guards in the first 4 picks. They got TJ Ford at 4 and someone.
No, they got Johnny Flynn.
Johnny Flynn.
And Ricky Rubio.
Sorry, Flynn I meant, not TJ Ford. Thank you. Like, that feels like this to me. It's like, I don't get it. Like, you're creating this logjam, and unless Jett Howard is going to be this superstar of, not trying to kill Jett Howard here, but I don't think he was the best. I don't even think he was the best shooting guard on the board, and they drafted someone where they already have 55 of them. So anyway, that was something of note, because I feel like, and you guys know what I'm talking about, is fans of teams who've had struggles. You only have so many times to have two picks in the top 11, and I just think they really bungled that one. Like, I like Black, but I don't think Orlando got that much better at all going into next year, and that's with liking Black. But yeah, I think they had much other opportunities to improve that team and didn't do it.
The internet, like on Twitter and stuff, like during the draft, all the Orlando fans were just saying fire the GM. Like,
and listen, James, like, there are times guys like making reference to, like, Cam Johnson, like, everyone railed against them. Cam Johnson's trying to be a great pick. I understand that happens.
Yeah.
What I can't make rationale of is what we just alluded to. They have so many guys at this position. Like, even if you don't think the guys on the roster are that superstar, you have a million guards. I just, like, if there's a close call, like, fit does become somewhat of a factor, right? Like, I'm not saying you take the 20th best player over Wemby because you need a guard. No, there's got to be some. Anyway, yeah.
I don't like, personally, I don't even know what Orlando is like, what they're doing. Like, they have a bunch of dudes that, I mean, maybe they're going for like positionless basketball, like, because they have a bunch of dudes that are like Paolo's 6'10", 6'11". They got Bol. He's a big that can dribble and shoot and things like that. They have Franz and Mo Wagner. They're both big players. Like, I don't know what they're going for. Like, they just want to have 6, 7 and up dudes on the floor at all times. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
And let me add one thing. Know either. I know I'm hammering against Orlando. I don't have a personal agenda, but I do believe in this. Yes, college results aren't your predominant answer what they're going to be in the NBA. But there's something too. You had 2 top 15 picks with Hunter Dickinson, who's, he stayed in college to go to Kansas, and you didn't make the tournament. Like, there's something to me about that. Like, I'm sorry, if you're that good and you're going to draft him over Grady Dick, over just Jordan Hawkins, you got to do more than that. And I saw enough of Michigan at the end of the year. They were awful at times. So, like, if you're that much of that, you're going to draft out of where you have 30 of guys at the same position. I'm sorry. I think it was ridiculous. Yeah, I stand by that. Orlando F. No, I'll give him a D because, like I said, I do like Black as a player. and he's Black can be more of a position. He has a little, not the same player by any means, but a little Andre Jackson for he can do other things. He can cause havoc. Jet Howard, I don't see this one at all. No way.
Speaking of Grady Dick, it would be remiss not to talk about winners and not mention that red suit.
That was a great suit.
I did really like Scoots though, the Johnny Cash looking thing.
I'm not kidding. When I saw that picture, I gave it a quick glimpse. I got home a little late for the draft. I honestly did a double take, and I was like, "Is this a Game of Thrones picture?" I'm not even kidding, because I didn't see the reference point that it was from the draft, and I'm like, "Oh, that's." And then I thought, "Wait a minute, did they know he was going to Toronto? Because it was the red that fits the Raptors."
Yeah. He probably knew.
He had Shad Red on. Like, I think Shad plays for the Raptors.
Wow.
Shad Red. He got his own hue.
He knew Shad's his biggest fan. That's why I wore it. Shooter of threes, first of his name, Grady Dick.
Yeah, that was some outfit, boy. Either good, horrible, everything in between. It was yeah. You won't forget that one.
Yeah. So Shad, last but not least, your draft reactions. Any big time winners, losers?
Well, I'm pretty much gonna go all losers. My first reason, Chase already alluded to it. ESPN or /ABC. I was watching on ABC at first, but the draft coverage, like, they literally missed the 6th and the 7th pick because they were running a story on the Thompson twins. Like, it was like Nikola Jokic in the second round they did almost that time when they ran a Taco Bell commercial during his pick. Like, they literally did not show these two guys get drafted. I had no idea who they were or anything like that. I just happened to see in the background when I think like Stephen A. Smith was talking, some guy on stage, like with Adam Silver. Like, they didn't say it. They didn't like tell you who it was. Nothing. It was just like, oh, like, we'll just talk about the top 5 picks. Everybody else doesn't matter. So big L for, ESPN, ABC, whoever you want to blame in that position. My second, loser goes to, I'm sorry, I give it to the Charlotte Hornets. I think they messed this up the way they did this. They could have, put more buzz out there because everybody's talking about they wanted Scoot Henderson, and they could have like bluffed and traded with the Portland Trail Blazers and, they had to move up and you got like additional draft picks or players or something like that. If you really wanted Brandon Miller, like, you could have moved down a spot and gotten him, or you could have gotten a haul, for that number 2 pick, because it sounded like everybody was just so high on Scoot Henderson. You could have got, pretty much anybody besides in the NBA besides Victor Wembanyama and like Jokic and, Greek Freak. So, and Big L, why would you let Michael Jordan make the pick? Like, he's leaving as majority owner, and you see his draft history. He's only drafted like one good player in his like 15 years as owner. Why would you even let him touch that? So that's probably all of the Michael Jordan fault right there. So that's one of the reasons you're not the GOAT. So big L to the Charlotte Hornets. My last L goes to, I guess, an organization. I'm going to say a big L to the NCAA, college basketball, because I think their biggest stars, their 3-4 year biggest stars, they didn't even get drafted. You got guys like, Sanogo, you got, Drew Timme, you got Oscar Shibwe, you got Marquise Noel. These guys were stars in the tournament and just, all of, pretty much all of last year. And they didn't even get drafted. So what does that say to like the players coming up? Like, I'm going to go to the G League, or I got to make sure I leave the NCAA in a year or 2 tops, because I may not have given drafted. They're going to think because I'm older or anything like that, they're not going to pick me up just because they think, my ceiling is already, I'm already close to my ceiling. So I think it's going to be a bad thing for the NCAA coming up. I think a lot of these players are going to try to take different routes. I think, maybe if they do stay, they're going to I don't know, they're going to back out the draft like a Zach Edey, and he's probably going to be undrafted now just because they have more time to pick you apart. I don't know what it is, but I think it's going to be bad for these young stars coming up in the draft over the next few years.
I feel like they should put a caveat on, like, these like generational talents that can play in the league out of high school, let them do it. But if that's not you and you want to go to school, they should put a caveat on that where you have to play 2 years or whatever. So like two or 3 years to actually build up, have some kind of rule on it like the NFL does, where you do have to get some development on there. So it's not just like 1 year and you think you're the pig's gravy and you can just jump to the league, and next thing you know, you don't get drafted, or you wind up in the second round, or back end of the first round, you're not getting the money that you thought you were going to get. I mean, put like some kind of qualifier on the college players to at least let them know, like, hey, if you're not this once in a lifetime talent, stay in school and get some polish before you try to get back in the league. I mean, I know to your point that didn't actually help some of these other kids,
right? I don't think it helped anybody.
Yeah.
Well, one counter to this though, because this is new, so this is something interesting, and Edey was a good example of this. You know why I think one of the main reasons Edey went back? He's going to make more money in college, and this has become a real factor now. Like, so I don't disagree, Shad, with you're right. They have more options, no doubt about it. But you're seeing some guys go back because like their agents are knowing they're going to get, like, Edey's going to make more money at Purdue than he probably is anywhere beyond this. I mean, granted, Europe, he may make a roster, but those NIL deals, like that's how that winds up playing out over the next number of years. Like, these kids are making good money, So I think there are certain players who went back because of that. And it's interesting you brought up Sanogo. Like, I don't know this. I thought Sanogo had it. I still think he's going to make a roster. I don't know because he's not American, and I'm actually admitting I don't know this. Is he not eligible for that NIL money? And I'm admitting I don't know how, like, passports, visas work for college players, but just an interesting subplot, because I think the NIL, there's still much debate who's going to regulate this, how much that is playing. On the contrary, that's playing a factor the other way now too, because I think Edey was gone without that.
Didn't he have an endorsement deal with Sunoco gas stations?
That was me calling him Sunoco, but I don't know if he really did.
No, I thought he really
call him
did,
the Sunoco station because it sounds like him, because he was always delivering, but I don't know.
No, I really thought he had like some like local deal in Connecticut, like he was endorsing Sunoco gas stations.
Shad, you very well may be right. I was wondering if, like, is that, I don't know that, to be quite honest. But I did call him the gas station because he was always pumping out baskets and wins.
Yeah, I just don't like how they like almost penalize like these guys that come in at like 22, 23, 24 years old. It's like they just think they're supposed to be already polished players, and they just penalize them for that. So I think it's a bad thing coming up.
To expand on your point, Shad, here's what I don't get to. Like 23, 24, okay? You're still in your, like, nearing your physical peak at that age, right? And in today's modern NBA, how many guys play beyond their first contract with the same team anyway, right? So, like, unless you're, I understand a Wemby or these kids, and I think they should be able to go. I've always said this. You can go be in the Army at 18. Well, guess what? You should be able to go to the NBA. Totally agree with that. But I don't, like, I'm with you. I don't know why, like, a kid who's 22, 23, what did you expect to have him for 18 years? Like, the guy at 23, unless he's logged significant injuries and surgeries, is still, like, not even at his physical peak yet, right? I'm with you. I think that's a little overrated, especially with the way the CBA and all that stuff is structured. Hardly any of these guys are playing 10 years with the same team. 10 days in some cases.
I mean, JJ Redick was hardly a superstar, but he played 4 years in school, played significant minutes, and he still logged in a pretty highly decent NBA career.
That's It just makes me laugh. Unless, okay, I get it if you're like a top 3 pick, but beyond that, how long do you expect to have these guys anyway? They get too, honestly, in today's day and age, you get too expensive. They probably can't afford you anyway, unless you're the guy they build around. Hence the million trades that are made, right? So,
Yeah.
Chad, I agree with. Like, I think that's like what? 23. He's not 72. You know, jeez. Nothing against 72-year-olds. I just don't envision seeing any in the NBA anytime soon.
Well, unless he's Greg Oden, then he probably is 72.
Yeah, I just think these guys can contribute. Like, even if you don't take them like, first round, take them second round. They can contribute to your team, in a year or two, and it'd be nice rotational players.
Don't disagree at all.
Did they ever change that rule? Do you think anyone's like scared that somebody can do that with a polished college player and they'll turn into another Gilbert Arenas? Early Gilbert Arenas, not before he lost his mind.
I mean, I think it's been a constant, back and forth. But I mean, the bottom line is, to get back to it, is like, the NBA has changed their own policy. Are letting high school kids in? Do they have to play a year here? I'm of the opinion, you know what, buyer beware. I mean, I can't tell some kid you can't go and, enter the draft. That's my opinion.
Partner, you got any more draft nuggets?
I think for me, and it's kind of like just like I think it was pretty cool to see the Thompson twins like drafted right after one another. I think that was pretty cool to see. So if there was a winner, I would say their parents in the draft.
Yeah, like
that is one thing. I mean, I completely agree with all Shad's point about how ESPN botched the broadcast coverage, but I did like how they did bring up a lot of the parents to talk. Now, maybe that did distract from the actual coverage of the draft, what you're supposed to be covering, but it still kind of did bring an extra little nice thing to it. They just probably shouldn't have forgotten what they were actually covering, but it was a little nice extra element.
Yeah, those stories sometimes, I know they're nice and dandy, but just sometimes they feel a little fluffy. It's like, can we get back to the draft like that?
Yeah.
Like I understand they're good stories. I'm not trying to be, but I want to see the draft.
Yeah. Show me some highlights.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice showing things about the kids' families and all that, but you can make a 30 for 30 on that.
I'm telling you, 6 picks before I saw some B-roll.
It's like American Idol now.
Like I said, unfortunately, I had to jump on late. I was following from afar, but the second round, I obviously watched the entire late end of the first second. I felt like, I know they've done that in the past, but at least half the picks were announced during a commercial. Like, not announced, it just came up on the blog. It's like, talk about these kids. Like, you're trying to promote the league. You're trying to educate people on the players, right? Anyway.
It's not like the NFL draft where you're doing that in the 6th round.
Yeah, I agree. There's not
only
300 people drafted. There are only 58 because of 2 teams lost pick. There weren't even 60 picks. So
well, we're not losing picks, but we are losing time on the season. Thanks everyone for joining our off-season extravaganza, and the way this off-season is going, we'll probably have another one before we get to the end of the summer. Stay in the conversation with us on Twitter and Instagram at Hoops Boys Pod, and subscribe to our official home on YouTube, Hoops Boys Podcast. Hoops Boys is one word, by the way. Maybe that was a little mistake of mine, but hey, it works, right?
It's a word.
Anyway, gentlemen, partner, we'll do this up again. Thank you to our guest experts as always. Gregor's in the Shaddillac. We'll do this again. We'll wrap up the this extravagant off season probably again, because who knows what's going to happen, and maybe Dame will get traded. Anyway, toss one back. Hit me with it.
My sis.